So just give it another minute or so, guys. We'll wait for Amar to get here, and then I'll start waffling. Is there any questions just off the bat though? Right? Is there anything in particular that people want to learn or understand, or are you happy for me to waffle for a bit first, and then see if there's anything that I've missed?
Yeah, I can't log in. Is it any problem with me listening in?
Nope, that's fine.
Cool, thanks. Happy New Year.
Yeah, you too, man. Hopefully 2022 is going to be a better one. I want to meet some more nerds.
I'm not a nerd, but I have fun.
Yeah.
Space nerds.
I mean, I'll substitute any nerd. It's fine.
Cheers.
Are we in B170 or somewhere else?
Yep, we're in B170. If you just join Fleet Warp to Bosric. Yeah, I thought that. You know, there is an init standard fit, but it's not on the off site. I think.
I was just a second looking at that as well, and about to ask the same thing.
So I'll show you which one I use for the saber, and I'll explain the reason why. Well, in fact, I'll show the reason why in a minute. I know a lot of people like the faster warp, right?
Is there any fleet to join, or?
Yeah, it's under Bosri. Dictator training. I'll link it in it when I find it.
Okay.
Dictator training.
Dictator training, yeah. You all must. So I'm going to focus heavily on the interdictor, but it is so I'll talk roughly about tackle as well, like in general.
Is it not the same?
Well, like tackle, like stilettos and stuff, right?
But what's the big difference then between the two types?
Well, one uses a bubble to tackle as well as point and scram, and one uses just a point and scram.
And it's the interdictor then who has the bubble functionality?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the interdictor is the destroyer that has the ability to launch a probe, which drops a bubble. And we've now got 3 different types of bubbles. Well, again, I'll start and we'll go through that. So it doesn't matter if you're not here yet, right? You can slowly start coming here. I'll just start doing the waffling bit before we start doing some of the visual demonstrations and such. So first off, right, I'm going to ask a few questions, almost like we are in a class. And if this method doesn't work, then great, we'll leave it and I'll just waffle. But feel free to just shout up, right? One of the first things that obviously as a dictator, and this is specific to dictators, not just tackle, but a dictator pilot is obviously its role within the fleet. It's not just, well, what is a dictator's pilot role?
Suicide.
Well, like that, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much to get all the fleet tackled so that they can't bail, to establish control, create control.
And also defensive bubbles when you don't want raids to land on you.
Yeah,
Also
well
to
done.
slow people down and other things, right?
Yeah. So that's basically what I wanted, right? I wanted a multitude of answers. It's so varied, the role, and it's individual to that moment rather than just that fleet or that person. So there's been times where, exactly what you said, to slow people down, we had a reinforcement structure coming out and the enemy fleet had 7 jumps to come through. So all I did is slow them down to the point where they nearly missed our timer before they even started. And it was great. We won the timer because they only had 3 minutes left on the timer to try and reinforce it. So yeah, these delay tactics, defensive bubbles like Fruck said, where if you're trying to maintain range control and they've got probes out, if you just drop a bubble in between you and that fleet, they can't then warp to 0 on you. So that again saves your dudes. And obviously the main one, right? Where you're tackling their fleet to try and hold them and kill them. Those different roles and those different types, they change on any sort of moment. It's not just, like I said, it's not a specific fleet, right? This is what you're doing. You can go with the intention of going to destroy a fleet and then all of a sudden have to run. So then your dictator role pilot just instantly switches, right, to either delay or defense. So we're going to cover a few of those different things in like actual demonstration a bit later. But obviously, it's a small little ship, right? So they're very squishy. They die quickly. One of the first main uses that you'll probably use as a saber will be on a gate. I think that's probably most places where you'll first start using saber is on a gate. And probably my personal experience is that a saber shouldn't really be aggressing on a gate. Your main role in that aspect is to bubble up, reapproach the gate, jump through if you get aggressed, sort of thing, right? Because it's so weak, it's very easily targeted, and because you're holding the fleet, you're always going to be targeted first. There's some support skills to help you. Most of you, and again, if I start talking about this and you think this guy's just telling me some of the basics that I know, I'm sorry. Some people might not know it, so just bear with me. But the Interdictor skill is well worth training up because it reduces your signature. Obviously, that prevents people from locking you quicker, and if they can't lock you so quick, they can't apply damage so quick. It gives you that extra few seconds to get back to the gate or get out of position.
Does that work on any ship?
No, so it's a trait for all interdictors. Every level of interdictor you get like a signature reduced. If you show information on your ship, it'll tell you. I forgot what it is.
It's the scan resolution or something, or signature radius.
Yeah, to your micro warp drive, that's the one. So 10% reduction per level, which is significant. Evasive maneuvering, acceleration control, all that sort of stuff, right, will help you because one of the main things you need to be is mobile, agile, and quick. The reason, like I said, I use this dictator rather than the warp one because I know that I can drop a bubble, I can do one cycle on my prop mod, and I'll be on the edge of the bubble. Bunny's asking, is it worth training to 5 on the interdictor skill as a pilot below 100 mil? And again, I think that depends on you because if you're going to be flying dictors a lot and you start enjoying it, then yeah, definitely. But if you're only going to be using an interdictor once a month, then maybe not. But it's still a short train. I don't think it's massively. I think I'd rather say that is definitely a personal choice. I mean, it's an extra 10%. It takes, I think, 24 days, is it? 16 days.
Around it, yes.
Yeah. So it's not long, but kind of long. So it's all about if you use it, right? For me personally, I'd probably just use the daily logins, the 150k, and just over a slow month, just get it for free, right? And just when you get that 150k SP injection, drop it into it. If you're only using it a little bit. So there's so with the roles covered, guys, we know obviously that you can quickly change from being defensive, aggressive, or you could be delaying a fleet or tackling a fleet. Is there any other roles that we've not covered? I think that's them all, but I'm also, a little bit blind. I could have missed any of the other stuff that you use a dictator for. Cool. I think that's right. Yeah. So, does anyone need anything explaining about how to delay a fleet? We touched on it briefly, but it might not be so obvious. Well, we'll go through the mechanics, and then when we start going through that, it'll maybe be a little. I'll go over it. I like it. So the delaying, right? So I'll use the example that we had before, where we had enemies coming to shoot our structure. They had 7 gates to come through. We knew the route. So all I did is I would either bubble the in gate so their whole fleet had to either split up and then they'd be vulnerable, or they had to get everybody out of the bubble first. But then when they landed on the other side of the gate, they would also land 80 or 100 kilometers off because I'd use a stop bubble or a drag bubble. So that would just give them an extra 5 minutes nearly per system, especially on the long warp systems. And each time you do that on every gate that they needed to come through, it starts adding up. I don't think we'll have any of the Quokka guys, will we? No. So there's a corporation who joined just before us, Quoker. They was the guys who we used it for, and they hated my sabering pilot.
Can I ask a question to the defensive bubbling?
Sure.
When we are on fleet, the FC always calls for the bubble to be 100 off the gate. Is that because it doesn't function without 100 kilometers, or is it just because of convenience?
No, it's because you cannot warp. Once you are outside of the bubble, you cannot warp to the gate. You are at less than 150.
Yeah.
So you have to burn from the bubble to the gate, or to move away from the gate at more than 150 and warp to the gate. So it's much slower.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly that. So these two mechanics that work there. Really, the warp to 100 is just probably the easiest to sort of command. Ideally, for me personally, I would want to warp people at the bubble at 50. You drop the bubble. The bubble's 20 kilometers in range. So then that's the fleet's landing at 70. So to warp, you need to be 150 kilometers away from whatever target is that you're warping to. So if you're landing at 70, you're right in the middle mark. So that's almost like the optimum. You can't burn backwards faster, or you can't burn forwards faster. So for me personally, I like to drop the Dictor pilot at 50 and then get him to bubble.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean.
But since we're on the mechanics, and that's the next thing, we'll start talking about some of it. So there's 3 different bubble types. One of them never gets used. A surgical warp disruptor probe. That's only got a 10 kilometer range on its sphere, but it does last for longer. I think another minute on top.
3 minutes.
Yeah. So that one lasts for 3 minutes. The normal one that you use is just the warp disruptor probe. That one lasts for 2 minutes, but it's bigger, and that's a 20 kilometer sphere. I'll just drop one now. So obviously you've all seen them, but if you've got your tactical overlay on, you'll see that it covers just a 20 kilometer ring.
Where exactly are we?
Just warp to Bosri.
What Bosri?
Yeah, and there's now another one, and it's one that's not used often. It's the Stasis Webifier probe. Now that one is only 15 kilometers in range, and it reduces your speed, I think 40%. I don't use these often. I'll link it in fleet. I've got some on me. I personally don't have much of a use case for these in the way that I generally fly a Dictor, but there is definitely a case for trying to capture a fleet, and then if you've got 2 Dictors, one with web, one with bubbles, it really significantly sort of holds them in the fleet. The problem that I see with that is that your Dictor's also affected by the web, right?
FC, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I mean, when we tackle something, for example, I know it's not defensive, but when we tackle rockers, sometimes I play Dictor. I never know when my bubble will disappear, and I have to decloak and put another one, except looking at in space. Do you have a trick for that to know that you will get close from the 2 minutes and the end of the bubble?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So exactly that. So if you are tackling, right, and it only lasts 2 minutes, you need to know, and especially if you're the only Dictor in your cloak. So there's one thing that I do, but I'll only ever do it if there's other Dictors on grid with other bubbles. Every time I drop a bubble, I'll reload. My reload cycle is a little bit shorter than the length that the probe will stay up. So once I'm fully reloaded, then I'll uncloak and put another up.
Roger.
I'll also taking a note of the time, right? So I'll whenever I drop a bubble, I always just take a quick glance at the clock, and I know that it'll last 2 minutes. I'll only ever go like just a little bit over the first minute before I do it if I'm the only Saber pilot. So I'll probably bubble every minute if I'm the only pilot.
Roger, thanks.
When you're also tackling on that, one of your best friends is the cloak. But prior to that, you'll need to have perches. Now, this is going to sound like a dumb question to most people because you'll probably already know it. But if you warp into an enemy, say super, and you need to tackle it, how would you get your first perch?
First what?
Your first perch. So like a ping that's 150 kilometers or more away.
Control B as you're warping in.
Exactly. So if you're new to the Dictor pilot, this is something that's going to help you massively. When you warp to somewhere, and before you land, if you have the Control B option, which is the shortcut for dropping a bookmark, also there's a radial menu for you to do it as well. If you just think left click and hold your ship, go to the plus mark and then up, something like that. I forget what it is. Left click plus mark. Oh, it's down. But yeah, so the drop your bookmark. When you press enter and when you close that window, that's the point of where it'll try to drop the bookmark. So generally you'll do it when you're sort of like, when at the bottom above your HUD, it'll tell you how far you are until the end of your warp bubble. When it says about 1,000 kilometers, that's when I drop my first bookmark. Sorry. So let's just burn out here. We'll do that straight away. So burn out the bubble. I know that I only have to do one cycle on my prop mod and I'll be outside of this bubble. So it works better obviously when you go into say like a longer point, right? So the longer that you've got to warp. So we're going to go to this mobile observatory. So everybody get out of the bubble. And then just before you land, I want you to drop a bookmark to do a perch. And once you have landed, warp back to that bookmark. Everybody just warp to 0. So you can see above your HUD now, it's telling you your distance, slowly counting down in AU. Then it'll come in like 100,000 kilometers. And that's when you start timing it, right? And walk back to your bookmark and let's see how far you are. Because one thing that you'll probably notice is that you'll either go, these almost like, oh look at this, jarheads like me. I could try, but I'm doing it. So you'll see here that it's, you'll hopefully see a pattern that like it's almost every 50 meters, I think it is, 50 kilometers. You start coming out of warp in a jagged state. How far is Nicole away from Ted? I forget the range.
Just wait, I gotta turn my mic on, sorry.
No worries. So yeah, Nicole and Ted, how far are you two apart?
4K.
Yeah, so if you so what I'm trying to get at is it's not an immediate stop, right? So whenever you drop the bubble, it's not exactly at that moment that you are in space. You're flitting through space in sort of like a bounce, like a sound wave almost, or a heart monitor, like you're skipping over. So timing that right is great, but that's how you get your first perch, right? So you can come drop your bubble, burn straight back out your bubble, go to a perch and cloak up. Also, when you drop a bubble, you'll want to drop a bookmark as well, because if you're at this perch and you haven't got that warp in again, you've got nothing else to warp back to. So always drop one as you land and as you place one.
But you can cloak up, right, if you blow it.
Yeah. Yeah, so long as you're 2 kilometers away from the probe that you launch, you can cloak. Does that make sense on dropping on your first perch?
Yep, makes a lot of sense, and that was new information.
Cool.
Have to practice
so
it.
Question. So, for example, imagine there's a gate with enemy fleet, and then you want to put a perch, so you would warp to the gate at 100 kilometer and put this kind of bookmark as well on the way, and then once you have to uncloak, you hope for the best. I mean, you just walk back to your perch.
Yeah, exactly. I forever, and now that we've got this 3-hour limit thing on the bookmark, is it 3 hour? Yeah, 3 hour 2 days. That 3-hour limit thing, it's great. I drop bookmarks everywhere I'm landing whenever I'm on a fleet, like absolutely everywhere. I go crazy.
Now, is that personal bookmarks or shared bookmarks?
I do it in our corporation shared one or my personal one, depends. I've started to do it in my personal one because I dropped so many, and you've only got a 500 limit, and obviously our corporation has like all of gate pings and all the other stuff. So I've started to do it on a personal. But yeah, it's one of them things that sort of like it gives you an edge because you've already got an out, you know, and you can start working from there, or rather than having to burn 150 kilometers off. So that covered quite a bit on the tackling thing. With a warp probe bubble, does anyone know the effective range? So how far do you need to be? Oh, I don't know how to word this. Let
10
me.
kilometers.
No. So what I'm trying to say, like, when will a bubble stop you from warp? Do you know the distance from the end of your warp? Well, I'll give you the mechanic first, and then without the range. So, warp bubble. Well, yeah, exactly. A warp bubble will will calculate at the point of you warping where the end of your warp tunnel is, and then if that warp tunnel is within a certain kilometer of the center of the bubble, then that'll define on if it pulls you to that point or if you'll go to your original destination.
That's 500 meters.
500.
500 kilometers, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now,
that's why I make gate pings always more than 500 away.
So as far as I remember, so in the wartime in Delft, there is a lot of bubbles. So test just some mechanic when you just jump over the bubbles and
Actually, test copied us. That's what Pando, etc. did in Fontaine, and after that, other guys did the same. There is some tricky interaction between bubble, and you can force people to land on the gate using another drag bubble, etc. I suppose that PG will explain it better than me, but it's quite complex.
Are we talking about the double bubble?
Yes, you know, when a gate is bubbled, but you put another drag bubble at exactly, I don't remember, maybe 400 and something kilometers, and when you warp, you can land directly on top of the gate while the gate is bubbled.
Yeah. So it's all about so the calculation works from the center of the bubble, right? Yep, no worries, Nemo. It's absolutely fine. So I did set this up. Now looking at these bookmarks after a few drinks, I forget how I was supposed to do this, but let me try and figure it out. So it's 500 kilometers away from the center of the bubble, right? But that's from the end of your warp point. So if you've got, say, a mobile large bubble, that circumference is bigger than my dictor bubble. So how am I doing it? Right. So I should have brought some mobile anchored ones to show you. I forgot about this. It's measured from the center of the bubble. So if you are going to get pulled from one bubble, but right, well, who's this dictator? Tammy, can you just come to where I am on my spot? I think it'll be easier if I talk myself through it whilst I've got two visuals. And if everybody else goes, yeah, where Martin is, that's fine. The ranges might not be the same because he's only 250. There's another bookmark back at that 505. So basically what we'll do is we'll pretend that Tammy is a Saber pilot, right? And we'll pretend I'm a mobile anchored bubble. My bubble is a lot bigger than 20 kilometers, but say if Martin warps to me and he's 500 kilometers away from Tammy, but he's 505 away from this large bubble, the center of it, he's only going to get stopped if Tammy puts his bubble on, whereas my bubble will still stop him from warping once he lands. So let's get everybody over here. I think I've got a better way to... I'm a little bit stuck on this one on how to explain it. I understand the mechanic, but it's hard for me to explain it, and I don't know how people are understanding this or how best to put it out. So I'll try this.
Honestly, it's quite complex and it will be used very rarely, and I think it's for the advanced course
Yeah.
for dictors.
Yeah, but you do raise a point.
There was some post, I think it was on Reddit or video explaining that, but we will try to find it again.
Yeah, no advanced stuff. So let's pretend, right, that this is a large, the small bubble, right? But the large bubble will go at least 10 kilometers more than that, right? So if I've got a bubble at 10 kilometers already up, but the center of that bubble is more than 500 kilometers away from you now, if you warp to me, you'll get stopped on the bubble that's within 500 kilometers from you, but the other bubble is going to stop you from warping. So you've just got to position yourself away from a bubble. So like you're 500 away from the bubble that you want to be stopped by. And it is, like you said, it is very complicated, and it's probably one that I need to actually set up and try to plan a visual to explain it, because it is very, very difficult. But if you understand that the center of the bubble is the point that gets calculated, then you can sort of position yourself to a point where you can choose which bubble is going to drag you. Yeah, you caught me out on that one, but I am going to note that down because it's well worth at least explaining. So one reason why it's really worth, and it's again, it separates the Dictor pilot of knowing this 500k range, is that the other day we was fighting, I took out 3 of my corps with ONIs, and we fought a gang of 11. We managed to kill 4 of them because we separated them with some very clever bubble tactics. Basically what we did is we allowed some of the fleet to get to the gate, some of them got dragged by a bubble, and the others then who got dragged by the bubble couldn't warp back to the gate because I had already bubbled the gate after they landed. So it was a really, really clever use of it, but we used it, I figured it out because I understood the ranges of 500 kilometers, and I set up the pings on the gate for that. So the timing of when you place a bubble is also very key. If you hit warp, at that point, if the bubble's up, then you'll get stopped, dragged, or the bubble will affect you. If the bubble goes up after you've hit the warp point, then it doesn't affect you. Does everybody understand that?
Yeah, that's why when we are running away from raids, the FC has dictors on the outgate to wait for the fleet warp initiation before bubbling up to slow down the enemies, but not our fleet, correct?
Yes, exactly. And we'll just do a very, very quick demonstration on it. So like if you you all warp to, in fact I'll do it now. So the FC will have you aligning, right? And then he'll warp you to someone, and then he'll call for the dictor bubble after you've done the warp. And it'll look a little bit like this, where there's a bubble stopping the fleet, but you guys will all be able to go straight through it once you pick up that warp. Did I actually do a squad warp?
Didn't catch it.
You did not do the fleet warp.
Right, okay. Sorry. Let that bubble go down. I did it too quick, I think. But yeah, this is the delay tactic, right? So this would be where the enemy fleet would land, because they've hit warp. They're waiting for you to warp to see what direction you go in, and they're activating their warp after you guys. So if you go back to that 505, I'll do it a little bit slower. Oh, that's a perfect thing there. Look, I like that. So these two here warped from the back to the 505, but because this bubble was within 500 kilometers of their end point, they got dragged and stopped here. So they didn't also make it to the destination, right? And it starts to get very, very complicated, but once you start doing it a few times, it becomes less complicated. It almost becomes natural. Not necessarily just this bit, but I mean like the whole bubbling mechanic. And it's all about practice. You'll see that I go through a lot of sabers because I try loads of crazy stuff. But like I said, we went 3 people against 11, and one of those people was my saber. Like it's stuff that you shouldn't really do on paper, but you got to try to do some crazy stuff, and then all of a sudden it all works. Did you guys get that fleet warp even though I was in the bubble?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Wow, I did not expect that. I thought because I couldn't do it, then you wouldn't. So I'm learning, right?
Why would you risk your own ass? But you're
Yeah.
Looks like you can also get stopped as the bubble collapses.
Well, this is the thing. So it's all about timing. So if you hit warp and that bubble is up at that point of you hitting warp, then you're going to get stopped. Sometimes you'll land on a ghost bubble, as I call them, which is a bubble that's expired, but during your warp was there. So it's quite fun.
So that also explains the mechanic that if your warp core stabilizer is on at the time of warping, that would get you out of there.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. That's the perfect one. I did it too quick earlier. So you guys warp straight through the bubble. The enemy fleet would end up landing at the bubble, giving you hundreds of kilometers distance to be able to start burning back.
nice.
So you won't be able to walk back to that diving. I can't remember how I was setting it up to show you the 500-kilometer range thing, but I think does everyone understand the difference? Like, if this bubble's 501 kilometers away from you, it'll have no effect on where you walk, but if it's 500, then it will pull you to the edge of its bubble, right?
Yes.
Just to clarify, what matters here is where my end point of the warp is, yes?
Yes, the end point of your warp.
And the moment where it matters if the bubble is up is when I initiate warp or when my ship enters the warp tunnel?
Initiate it. So if you're not aligned, you'll hear sometimes the FC say that, like, if you didn't warp, don't cancel the fleet warp, carry it on, because if you cancel that warp and then warp yourself, you've reinitiated warp and it'll redo the calculation. So as soon as you hit warp, that's when it does the calculation if you'll get stopped or not.
Thank you.
Very good point. Obviously, you can only use bubbles in nullsec and wormholes, right? Highsec and nullsec mitigate the whole thing of bubbles, and that's when other tackle come in place, right? The hick and the stiletto. Stiletto rolls a little bit different to a saber. Sorry, I always say saber because that's my favorite to the interdictor. A stiletto or a light tackle will normally be a scout at first, so always +1 of the fleet. And then when it comes to tackling, you're normally at long range or really short if you know your enemy. I don't use too much of the stilettos and stuff. So for me, a stiletto tackle is like you burn in, you tackle, or you're sort of like a scout, right? The first for the initial tackle, if you're on a roaming fleet, right? Does everyone know the shotgun method? Do you know what shotgun means? If you're talking to a tackling squad?
No.
So imagine that you're in a fleet and you're hunting down targets and you've just jumped into a fresh system, and you say tackle shotgun. Basically, all that is you're going to go to you're going to have your D-scan open first up, and if you see anything in range, you're going to go to Haven Sanctums if it's like a dummy, which are in range. If they're not, then you're going to go to any other range, and everybody goes to a different site and try to just pick up tackle. I think that's mainly how I would use a saber, sort of like the initial tackle or scouting.
Sorry.
So scout plus tackle is shotgun then.
Well, the shotgun method is just where you pick up a random site and you go to it to see if there's anything there to tackle.
What are the advantages or differences between sabers and flycatchers?
So for me personally, I like to know that I can do one cycle of my prop mod and then I'll be out of my bubble. So for instance, like to you guys here, right? Say that I'm on a gate and I'm bubbling an enemy jumping in. I can drop a bubble, do one cycle of my prop mod. At the end of my prop mod, my speed's going to reduce, but I'm already going to be at warp, and I can warp straight out of the bubble. So I'll do one cycle of my prop mod, and at the end of my prop mod, I'm going to be out. I can't do that in a flycatcher because it's just not quick enough. It's not agile enough.
Okay. And is it more tanky or?
A flycatcher has a bit more tank. A saber has a bit more agility. An Eris is great because you can fit it quite easily with a probe scanner, expanded probe scanner, to be a scanning dictor.
Okay. But which you cannot do on sabers and flycatchers?
Not very easily.
Okay. And does it happen that you use an Eris is an armor dictor? Yes.
Yeah, an Eris is for
does it
armor.
happen? Does it happen that you use an armor Eris in shield fleets or not?
Yes, it does happen. Just because if you specialize in a dictor, you're going to probably stick to that anyway. And dictor pilots are not so much rare, but especially getting a good one, it's hard to. So you'll almost pick any. But also because there is very little chance that you're going to either be engaged, and if you are engaged, take any shield reps or armor reps. The tank type isn't too important in my fleets and in my opinion.
Okay.
Some others may disagree with that, but for me, I think that if a dictor is going to start taking damage, especially in a fleet engagement, it's probably going to die very quickly.
Which brings me to another question. I understand the bubbling process on a gate, okay, and the saber bubbles the gate and can jump back through the gate because the bubble does not give aggro. Okay, I understand it, but I am always worried when we have to bubble a moving fleet which is not exactly on the gate. So you land on the fleet, you bubble up, and then I start moving, and I don't have the time to put another bubble. I am dead. You see what I mean? How do you deal with a moving fleet that you want to keep bubbled? You know, the FC says, keep them bubbled, keep them bubbled, keep them bubbled, and this fucking Munin fleet is moving. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so one of the first things is, especially if they're just moving on grid and they're staying on grid, but they're sort of anchored and moving out, but you want to keep them bubbled and they've not moved yet, then there's a few options. So you can suicide in, right, where you just bubble them up until the point where you die, which is why dictor pilots, when we asked about roles earlier, somebody said to suicide, right? That's generally how people use them. For me personally, I've normally got my dictor alt, my dictor as an alt, so I'm normally on grid. So what I'll do is I'll look at the direction that the Munins are moving at all times, and my dictor alt is moving to a celestial or something in front of them wherever possible. When it comes to the point of us bubbling them, I'll be warping in at range, and then I'll drop a bookmark. So I'll bubble them, then I'll try and get back to my bookmark, warp off, warp at range to that bookmark, so I come back at 50 or something. And using the cloak is probably the greatest thing that I've ever started to utilize on a saber. It's not just for staying cloaked and using your eyes. So if I you guys can be the enemy fleet, right?
So if I understand correctly, you don't drop two consecutive bubbles. You drop one bubble, you try to warp out, cloak up, and come back to put another bubble.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's what I was doing wrong. I always try to put 2 or 3 bubbles, and of course I die.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of suicide attempt, right? Because as soon as you drop a bubble, you instantly can't cloak because you've got a probe that's within 2,000 meters of you, right? So instantly the cloaking's out. So that's why timing dropping the bubbles is helpful. You can actually sort of put your prop mod on, activate your cloak, and drop a probe if you're quick enough, and still remain in your cloak. Because by the time that the cloak has done the cycle to activate to see if you're close enough to something, you're further than 2,000 meters away.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, for me, so say if you guys are the enemy fleet and you're coming to this way, I'll warp to you at 10. I've just accidentally warped you at 0. But generally I'll warp to 10 because I know that my bubble is going to be at least 20 away from you, right? And then I'll overheat my prop mod, do it for 1 cycle, and then drop a bubble. By the time that I'm just a little bit further away, I'll have hit cloak, and instantly I'm cloaked, and I'm nearly towards the end of the bubble. Right, so then now...
Yes. That's very interesting.
Yeah, so now look, I'm right at the end of the bubble. I can warp out. If I warp to here at 100, then I can drop another bubble, and you guys can't like go so far, sort of thing. Say if my bookmark's 150 away and I warp at 100, I'm only going 50, but then I can drop another bubble. It's very hectic and it's very chaotic, but utilizing the bookmark purchasing, like I said, dropping bookmarks, I do it all the time. The bookmark thing, cloak, and overheating 1 cycle of prop mod. This is why I like the saber fit that I've got, because I know, like I said, 1 heated prop mod cycle and a cloak gets me to the edge of my bubble.
I wasn't there for the beginning. Can you link your saber again?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
You'll see that it's got numbers, so there's a running thing because I've gone through 7 sabers since the turn of the century, turn of the year already. So I've started to number them. I don't know if I was talking a little bit too fast with it. Did people sort of follow me? I get a little bit excited sometimes when I know something and I'm trying to explain it.
No, it's perfect. Don't worry.
I must say it's actually good. We can practice a bit, fly around with some bookmarks and see what behaves differently.
Yeah, now there is one thing that's been happening, and I don't know, I can't explain the mechanics on it, right? It's been frustrating me all day, and we'll do it in a minute. So we'll clear bubbles, don't put any more bubbles down, and then I'll find the position again where I was doing it, and it frustrates me. So if we put more eyes onto it, it might help me understand. But Wick did say something there, which I haven't touched about, is that dropping a bubble doesn't give you aggression. That's why we're in B170 if you just warp to, yeah, somebody in fleet. That's why on a gate, a Dictor can easily drop a bubble, tackle a 20 kilometer sphere of fleet members jumping in, reapproach the gate, and just jump through again. So it doesn't give you aggression, which is great for gate games. We also spoke a little bit about how I time my bubbles, and I generally I'll do a reload, and then just after the reload, it's time to do another bubble. Never forget to reload. That's probably one of the biggest things, right? Because it does take a while. It takes I think it's 1:40, or something like that. I can't remember. So it takes about 1:40 to reload 3 probes back into your launcher. And
for me, it's 1 minute to reload.
Oh, is it only a minute? It might be a minute then, maybe. Oh yeah, because you've got to have the end of the cycle first, then reload. So it's not quite 1:40. It's like 1:10 or something.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
So you can also reload whilst you're cloaked. So just before you hit the cloak, or just straight after you hit cloak, you can still activate modules. So if you hit your cloak, if you're aligning somewhere now and hit your cloak, you'll still be able to straight away turn your prop mod on, and you'll also be able to reload. So whenever you hit cloak and you're out, make sure that you're reloading. If you jump in a gate and you know that you're holding cloak on the other side, reload. Try to always keep 3 probes in your launcher, because you've only got 3, but then those 3 make a difference.
And is there a hotkey for reloading? No.
I don't believe so. Maybe you could set one up. I don't know actually, but I don't think so.
Control R reloads all your modules.
There we go. Even I'm learning.
Ah, thanks.
Wow, you see, now that's going to make my life so much better. I assumed there was. I never looked into it because I just got into right clicking, right? So with this talking about the bubbles not giving you aggression on gates, one of the things that a saber pilot is to tackle somebody, right? But also decloak. This is something that I've only just started to get really good at, and I think there's a method that we might be able to utilize. So how to explain this? Your ship accelerates when you put your prop mod on, right? But if you're already going in one direction and you're trying to turn it into another way, you've got to de-accelerate before you can accelerate again. So the best way to decloak is to be stood still, have your prop mod already heated, and as soon as somebody comes through the gate that you're trying to decloak, double click them and then press Alt. Now what Alt will do will snap your camera to their direction, and you can see if they're moving up or down. You can then spin your camera back round and adjust your angle. So if they're burning straight up, you can change your angle a little bit up, so then that you're going to meet them in time to decloak them. I think you can also use C if you just wanted to track them, right?
Have you also just suggested the Q-click approach?
Yeah, the Q-click approach can work, but it's harder to, for me personally, it's harder to then get into a position where you're seeing where they're burning to, so you can readjust if you're going up or down, left or right, or if it's a big slow ship, the Q-click's great. Oh, we was talking obviously about how I sort of like warp in and out to try and tackle people. Another thing is you probably use this trick on DSTs and probably never thought about using it on your Saber before. But does people understand how the cloak micro warp drive trick works for a warp? Maybe not. So this helps because when you're cloaked, obviously they can't lock you, right? So obviously that helps you. And as soon as you come out of your cloak, you're going to warp straight off with this method, right? So when you cloak, you reduce your speed by 90%, something like that. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, 90%.
So 75 for the Tech 2. The
Yeah.
cloak trick is with the 75% one.
Yeah, perfect.
For T2 industrials, I mean.
Yeah, and then
for transport ship in general, you need the 75% to be able to do clock trick.
Yeah. For the Saber, obviously it's a lot more. Well, for the Interdictor, it's a lot more agile, so it's not as important. But like I said, what it does is it prevents the enemy being able to lock you and either apply damage or get you out. So this is if you're trying to bail and you're not in a bubble, right? So basically, when you cloak, you activate your micro warp drive and you turn it straight back off. Just before the end of your micro warp drive cycle, you uncloak and then you warp to the thing that you're aligning to. Then you'll instantly warp and they had no opportunity to target you.
You don't even have to turn it off. It will stop automatically after one cycle.
Yeah, it will. So, I mean, if you didn't understand that, you could maybe try. But it's a really cool method to quickly get you out of pinch and where they can't target you. It puts you in warp in a safe manner.
Yeah. Also, an expert trick is because I'm an industrialist flying around a lot. If you get through a gate and there's like a lot of enemies, so you know like they're gonna decloak me or you will not be able to get out. What you do then is just crash the gate, cloak immediately, and turn on your micro warp drive. It will give you one cycle and you will be almost at the gate.
Yeah.
And they will be aggressed, can't follow you.
And this is where the cloaking helps, right? Like I said, it's great. Yeah, it's exactly great to avoid war targets in high sec. But the cloak is something that keeps me on the super grid longer, right? Mixed with the bookmark purchase, the heater prop mod, cloaking, reloading. If you combine all of those little things together, it starts adding to a significant sort of change in the way that you start using your Saber. And I think the last thing that we haven't really covered is something again that I haven't really set up to show, but we can definitely talk about and explain, is that once there's a bubble down, that isn't it. It's not there for 2 minutes. You're probably already aware of this, that you don't have to just wait for the bubble to disappear for 2 minutes. There's a multitude of options that you've got. A bubble can be destroyed with area of effect damage, so either a bomb or a smart bomb. Or a boson if you've got a Titan. You can also What's a boson?
What's a boson? Yeah.
It's a super weapon from a Titan. It's area effect. It shoots out a cone of damage.
Does the Edencom jumpy attack also hit the bubble?
No, so they don't target them, unfortunately, because it's not a targetable entity. It's just an entity. So same as like missiles, you can destroy missiles, but the Edencom thing doesn't do those. It needs to be a targetable entity. What a good question. Yeah, so you can also boost this away, which gives you the option to boost bubbles onto people. So if a micro jump drive from a command destroyer is activated and that ship is still within 6 kilometers of the bubble will also jump with you. What I am unsure about on if that counts to one of the 25 limit or not. I don't know if anyone else knows that. It's very niche and it's probably very insignificant.
I don't think so. I think it's like fighters, you can push hundreds of fighters using command DCs and it does not count as 25 pilots.
Yeah, that's my assumption, yeah. Yeah, so you can be 100 away from a fleet. You know that they can warp off quickly, and you can put a bubble down and then boost straight on top of them, and then all of a sudden they're in a bubble, right? So you can move bubbles with boosters, you can blow them up with stealth bomber bomb or smart bombs or any area of effect damage. I have done a lot of waffling. I think I've covered most of the things. Is there anything that I need to recover because I either waffled over it too quickly, or there's something else that people want to know?
Yeah, another question, because you're now using the bubble from the ship, but there's also this, I think it's anchorable bubbles. What's the mechanic there? Is that the same or different?
Yeah, so each anchorable bubble has a few different variations in it. So it'll either be bigger, it'll last longer in space because they perish, like 2 days or a week, I think, for T1 and T2. But the mechanics are still the same in regards to stopping you. You can't boost them because they're anchored, but it's still the same. It's 500 kilometers from the center of the bubble, and that will affect you at the end point of your warp tunnel or not.
What do you mean boosting an existing bubble? What is this boosting? How do you do it, and what effect does it give?
Boosting, sorry, is what I meant. So MJD, and you can't MJD it because it's an anchored bubble.
But you can shoot it.
Yep. That one's a targetable thing, yeah. So that's not an entity in space, that's a targetable item. So you can actually lock that and shoot it with any ship. The Zappy Boys will target it as well. And they've got quite a lot of EHP, the T2 large. But for the stop mechanics, for the warp mechanics, it works the same. But you have just reminded me something, actually. So, to get on kill mails, right? Most of the times when you put somebody in a bubble, you don't see yourself onto a kill mail, but then sometimes you might. Does anyone know the difference on how that works? How to get onto a kill mail from a bubble or not? Or why sometimes it doesn't? So once you're in a bubble, if you're in a bubble and you don't activate or try to hit warp, it doesn't count as so if you try to activate warp inside a bubble and then you die, the saber is accounted on the kill mail as an interdictor pilot for preventing them from warp. Unfortunately, even if it stops you and pulls you out of warp, that's not the case. So if a pilot doesn't try to warp from within inside the bubble, and you get that warning where it says you can't warp because of a bubble or something, whatever it is. What's the warning? You are within a warp disruption zone. So if you don't get that, then you're not going to be on the kill mail for the saber that dropped the bubble. And that's the same for anchored bubbles. If somebody tries to hit warp whilst they're inside the bubble, then they're going to be on the kill mail. If they don't and they just burn out and then warp off and die, or not even warp off, if they just burn out of the bubble and die, then you're not on the kill mail. Don't know why it's like that, but it is. Sorry.
I have a question, which is more, I would say, a general thing. I always consider Dictor's pilots are pilots who have some autonomy and who have to be aware of the situation around, the systems around, where the raids are, etc. So from your point of view, is it better for the dictator pilots to be in FC chan to understand what happens, etc.? Because honestly, I fly a Logi, and when you are not on the FC comms, you just follow orders, but you are totally unaware of what happens and where are enemies, etc. So for a dictator pilot, should you be on FC comms or you are on main fleet comms?
100% for me, I would love all my dictator pilots to be in FC comms, especially with the way that I use them. But you mentioned something that's that I did want to say that I never did actually in the fleet, is that I personally think every interdictor pilot does need to be autonomous, because not only does the situation change, but you can really significantly change. So one of the best examples I've got of this is that the enemy fleet have tackled a Rorqual in a system, and there's only one structure, right? Everybody's shooting it, but you can't stay on grid because at the moment your Logi's not there and you're dying. So what you do is you warp 100 to the structure and you start keeping that bubbled. Then the tackle fails on the Rorqual and he warps off to a safe structure. All of a sudden, you have now not only just tackled the Rorqual, but you've also got the Rorqual away from the belt, and you've done that without command. That's what sort of like for me highlights the autonomy of being a dictator pilot, is reading the situation and trying to make the best out of it. So yeah, I personally, especially with how I use dictators, well, on the delay thing, if you're using a delay, you don't want the whole fleet to know, just in case of spies. Always treat your fleet as if there's a spy in there. So yeah, 100% dictators should be in comms channel.
Sometimes being in
Thanks.
comms is useful, but being able to preemptively know the area you're in to do something. So let's say you're in the Y2 to KVN strip, knowing what those exit options are and preemptively going there may be more helpful.
Yeah, in fact, you know what? Let's go to a bubble actually. Let's go. Sorry, a gate. Take this warp to IGE, because there's a couple of other things that I wanted to mention. The difference between a drag bubble and a stop bubble.
While we are in warp, in big fleet, do you coordinate? I mean, cooperate with other dictators? Do you open private convos to say I go there, etc., or every dictator does his own stuff on his own? And
so there is this little used channel. I've been trying to get people to use it. Where is it? I've been trying to get people to use this, right? I didn't make it. It was a channel I found. But this is exactly what I do, is if I am coordinating, I'll try to get them into this channel. And I don't know really if I should have shared it or not, right? Because it is sort of like a little bit of a niche one, so only join it if you're in fleet, please. Oh shit, there's loads of rats here. I don't like this.
I'm killing them.
I'm going to walk to a ping first off whilst I talk. Yeah, so whilst you're in fleet, being in this channel is great because it gives you that option to coordinate with, likewise it's supposed to be, hunters and dictators, right? So yeah, I do, but quite a lot of the times, I'll generally do my own thing, and sometimes it does get you in trouble, right? A dictator pilot, you'll always know, right? You've been on a fleet where a dictator pilot has done a bubble and the FC's gone, what the fuck are you doing, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's going to happen, right? You cannot avoid it, unfortunately. The FC might have a plan, and if he's not told you and you've not picked up on that, then, you know, sometimes mistakes happen. But
yes, I understand. The problem is, as a Logi, if I do a mistake, I just forget to rep one guy. As a Saber, if I do a mistake, I can bubble the entire fleet, my fleet. So it's not the same degree of mistake. That's the problem. But
yeah. But you can also pick up on that and almost change it, right? So again, knowing that your bubble's stopping you at that point, you can keep burning in the other direction, right? So then and drop another bubble, right? So at least your fleet's away out of a bubble that's say 50 kilometers, and then the enemy fleet's going to be in a bubble that you've just anchored again. That's going to be another 50 kilometers sort of thing. You can almost rectify it, but there's a lot of pressure sometimes. If you're ever unsure and you're not 85-90% sure that you should do it, simply don't do it, right? The worst case scenario is you're not going to either tackle something and it goes away, or if you're on a runaway plan and you're trying to use a stop bubble to slow down the fleet that's chasing you, the FC will tell you, right? So you'll never really get that wrong.
Yes.
But yeah, I was telling this story before. My first time as a Saber pilot with Pando when it was in Fountain last time, and I was just a renter. But I had an alt in it. I was very lucky. I had a beer, and instead of looking where I was trying to place my beer on the left side of my keyboard, I accidentally hit the keyboard. It hit F1. Everybody got bubbled, and everybody died. Great stuff. Fucking great stuff. Not everybody died, but a lot of people did. It makes you feel stupid, right? But it's going to happen.
You can blame the beer.
Yeah, of course you can. I mean, I'm going to warp to a different gate just where there might be a bit less rats. So let's go 6 VDT. Does everybody know the difference between a stop bubble and a drag bubble?
I'd like to hear it again.
Double bubble.
Yeah, well, when you do a drag bubble, it's great to do a double bubble, and we'll go through this in a minute with a live demonstration. But so a stop bubble will stop you from warp. A drag bubble will drag you further for your warp. So the end point of your warp tunnel is the point of what we're calculating. So a drag bubble will take you further than where you originally wanted, and a stop bubble will stop you shorter. It's as simple as that, right?
I see.
Yep.
How could you create a drag bubble? I didn't know it existed, and sometimes, for example, there was a bubble ahead a gate I was warping to, and I was like, what the fuck, why did I warp further than the gate? How does that work?
Perfect, yeah. So I'm going to do an example here, and I haven't got any pre-made pings on this gate, and normally I do on a lot of them. So this is why it's
I have one.
What, is that a drag? Where's that dragging from?
No, it's just a ping.
Alright, okay, yeah. No, I mean drags and stops. So I'm going to use IGE and 6VDT as an example. So we're going to assume that the fleet's coming from IGE and warping to 6VDT. Now, I'll show you how I set up a drag bubble. Do you all use the tactical overlay?
Yes.
Yeah. It's 2 nightmares on ESS. It's absolutely golden, right? It's something that you need. So if you put your tactical overlay on now, and if you're not used to this, it'll look a bit foreign, but you'll start to get used to it. And then if you choose the IGE gate, you'll see a very faint grey line that'll take from your ship to the IGE gate, right?
Yes.
Put that line directly behind you, so it's almost, so you're trying to get it into the middle of your screen, and then just double click, right? So you're just going to continue that line straight through this gate. Put your prop mod on. Here is you creating a drag bubble. And all you do is that faint line, you just make sure that it passes through the gate. Right, so as you're burning, if you need to go a little bit up, you adjust a little bit, you go up, but you make sure that that faint line is roughly going to be in the middle of that gate. Is that making sense?
Well, I'm just going to rephrase it. The drag bubble needs to be perfectly aligned with your when you land. Okay, the direction where you go, and when you land, you need to cross the bubble. Okay, and it needs to be at less than 500 kilometers from the place where you will land.
Yeah.
So you need to put the bubble, the drag bubble, aligned with the 2 celestial points, or the 2 gates, the in gate and the out gate.
You can warp to retro if you want to get a stop bubble point. For
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I rephrase it better than UPG actually.
Yeah, it's tough to explain something, right? Retro, you stay there for me, please. Just flag exempt fleet warps. Yeah, so we operate in 3D space, right? So a stop bubble has to be within 500 kilometers of your end, but also it has to be in line, right? So if it doesn't matter if you're coming in from a different direction, it needs to be in line. Otherwise, it's not going to be 5 kilometers sort of thing. You've got to intersect the path. Yeah, no worries, dude. Yeah, so does that make sense? That your warp path has to intersect it?
So here's a a bit of a bait question. Which bubble's better, the stop bubble or the drag bubble?
Oh, thank you. It's like I'm paying you. So there is a few differences, right? So a stop bubble and a drag bubble, obviously, one of them's basically behind the gate and one of them's in front of the gate. I always like to do a drag bubble for two reasons. One, not everybody expects it and it looks cool when you drag them further. That's the main reason, right? But the other reason is if I know that there's a fleet moving through, say this fleet's moving from IGE, right, and I know for certain it's going to go to 6 VDT, I will put the fleet inside 6 VDT at 0 on the gate. Then I'll wait for that fleet to come into system and I'll drop this drag bubble, right? So I'm at the moment 200 kilometers away from the gate. As soon as I drop this drag bubble, that fleet's going to be able to land 20 kilometers away from me, right? But you also can jump into system now and warp to me. Whereas if we've got a stop bubble, you're going to be 20 kilometers away because you're going to be on the back end of the bubble and the enemy fleet is going to be on the front end of the bubble. Does that make sense? Retro, can you do a bubble now? Wait, actually, everybody go to IGE. Yeah, I've just realized. Yeah.
We go to IGE?
Yeah, go to the IGE gate and align 6 VDT. Can I have one dictor warp to retro, but don't do a bubble yet?
Excellent, complete.
I hope I've set this up right. I've not checked. Oh yeah, it's fine.
You should. No, you're good.
Yeah. So if you just warp straight back to 6 VDT, everybody who's gone to IGE. And this is also... Go on, sorry.
Did you want a bubble at retro?
No, not yet.
No.
Soon though. So this is great. Also, the drag bubble gives you... this is how I was able to split the fleet before. But what you'll notice is if you try to warp to 6 VDT, try to warp to retro or anything like that, you'll land... Everybody will land here. So what I can do at this point, I'm not going to, and nobody put a bubble up yet, is I could put up another bubble, and you guys are now in 40 kilometers away from any edge of the bubble sort of thing, right? So you're in the middle of like two bubbles. So it's great because you know exactly where they're going to land, and if we had our friendly fleet in 6 VDT, they can warp straight to us, and they're at 0 on the enemy fleet.
I see.
Yep.
So, let's say that this bubble is up. You deploy a bubble. Now, let's say I am the enemy. I am in warp. Then you deploy a second bubble, and then that's the way I get caught between the first and the second, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So that's what I call a double bubble, right? But
okay. So you put your drag bubble, you wait for the enemy fleet to warp, and then you put a second bubble in the direction of the gate.
Yeah. Well,
in
generally,
the direction where they come from.
Yeah. So generally, what I'll do is when I'm setting this up, I'll set up my drag bubble. I'll warp to the out gate where I expect them to come from, and I'll warp back, and then I'll bookmark there so I know exactly where they're going to land, because everybody will land in a spot. This is great if you've got smart bombing battleships, or if you're trying to bomb a fleet, because you know exactly where they're going to land, right? Oh, sorry.
Can I add a bit on top of that? So the other thing he's done is he's made it about 400 kilometers off, right? If you notice, the people that have landed in the bubble initially can just turn around and walk back to the gate, right? So now, if you're dealing with a kitey gang that's very, very nano, really, really quick, having a really long drag bubble can be dangerous, right? Because they'll just pull out and then they'll be able to warp to the gate. So sometimes all you need to do is put a drag bubble at around 145 kilometers away from the gate. So they have to drive physically back to the gate or make another choice.
So kind of right. So this goes back to what we were saying before, that 50 kilometers, well, ideally you want people to land 70 kilometers from the gate, because then they've got a choice in the middle, right? They're either burning 70 kilometers or they're burning 80 kilometers to be able to walk back 150. For me personally, I always do my bubbles there because I'll always double bubble if I'm going to tackle them, and if not, if I descan them and I'm like, oh no, I need to bail, I can just warp straight to the gate, right? So imagine, in fact, we'll do it again once that bubble's gone, right? So I'm going to go back to this position. If you go to IGE again, And this is almost a very similar method to what we did when we was just 3 people fighting those 11 and we split up the fleet. So if you all go to IGE, and then just walk back. So imagine that, like, I don't know what you are at the moment. I'm just bubbling you, and then on D-scan I see loads of people coming, right? And I'm like, oh god, I gotta bail. I'll wait for you guys to land. So I'll do this, right? So I've got to bail. Now you've got to try and get to me, right? You're already stopped there. You can walk back to this gate. However, there's a bubble intersecting your path, right? So you're going to be 20 kilometers away and you're going to have to burn in. And I can just jump through the gate and then start burning away, right? So the reason why I like the drag bubble is for this, right? So what we did is we let 3 of the fleet members warp to the gate. Then I put the drag bubble up. Rest of the fleet went to the drag bubble. Then I warped 100 to the gate and put up another bubble, so they couldn't warp straight to the gate. They were stuck in between 2 bubbles, whilst everybody else was fighting at 0 on the gate. Now we'll do the last one. We'll do a stop bubble. So if everyone once again goes to IGE, and I'll show you I think you'll probably be able to understand at least the differences and the complications a stop bubble can give you. But we'll do a visual anyway. I'll tell you when I've got the bubble up.
2 dictors for this 2 bubble setup splitting the fleet?
No, so if you wasn't on grid, so you'll see it on the video. So what I did is I had the drag bubble up first and I burnt straight to the edge of the bubble. Once I saw you guys coming on D-scan, I warped to the gate and then put my second bubble down. So
I see.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just on reload actually because I did 3. Rip. This is what I'm saying. Always reload, right? It'll always catch you at the worst times. So just to line back to 6 VDT, I'll tell you when. Sorry, dude. I'm not ready. I hate reload. Yeah, so the problem with obviously a stop bubble is that like there's none of that leanway. Right, if you warp 6 VDT now. So this again is in my experience, right? I've wasted loads of sabers to try and perfect what I do. So if you guys are the enemy fleet, right, landing now, and I'm jumping in trying to grab you, there's 20k difference from, so I can't scram you instantly, right? Unless we've got like a Kirin or something. Not Kirin, Keris. Or a latch. So I can't scram you. You can instantly just turn back and go back to the other gate. Right? If you was like, oh shit, I need to bail, it's an easy bail for you. Whereas the drag bubble is far superior because you can either split the fleet, you can double bubble them, or you can just bail and get out. Hopefully that sort of makes sense.
Yeah, and the drag bubble adds I have to do a 180-degree turn to get around, right? Slows them down that little bit more.
Well, the game mechanics don't see. The game mechanics sees every ship as a sphere. So do you know your align time? That doesn't matter if you're facing away or to, which is something that nobody really knows much.
But it still takes time, right? You still have to turn.
Only if you're already at speed. If you're landing at 0, if you're landing and you're at 0 speed, it doesn't make a difference.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the weirdest thing, right? And it's only something that I found with when I was Rockle mining, is that every ship is counted as a sphere. So if you're at 0, it doesn't matter if it's away or in front of you. And again, like I said, it's one of those really niche mechanics. Did that make sense to people? The difference between the drag and the stop?
Yeah.
FC, we have disrupted quite a few people trying to travel through here. Maybe we move back again to the safe spot.
Yeah, probably, yeah. a good point.
We have just all been kicked from init for bubbling.
Just blame me, it's fine. I normally get blamed for a lot of stuff, so. Oh, actually, I'm getting pings about it. I'm not really, I'm joking. I mean, I think I've covered most of the information I've got. The problem is that, like, when somebody asks you to try and tell you everything about something, you're bound to forget it, right? You're bound one thing or two things, and then when something happens, you're like, oh damn, I forgot to tell you about that. Yeah, I completely knew. Is there any questions? Is there anything else somebody else wants to recover or anything else?
Yeah, I remember an additional type of capture bubble thing. It's when it's like in the middle of your travel between the two gates.
Yeah, it doesn't work no more. Yeah. So I can tell you about the mechanic, but it doesn't work anymore.
Ah, so it's removed from the game. This.
Yeah.
Yes, because you need to land at less than 500 kilometers from the center of the bubble. So if you are in warp between two points, you will land at more than 500 kilometers from the.
So it's basically that 500-kilometer limit that has removed this type of bubble then.
Yeah, I used to call them pull bubbles because they pull you out of warp. And do you know when we was doing the bookmarks and I was saying that you skip across the system where you go like 50, 50, 50, 50, 50 when you're coming out of warp? When you do a long warp across the system, you do that just on a much bigger arc. So there's moments where you can be on grid to somebody who's warping past you in a line, and that's where you used to put a bubble and it used to drag you out. But like I said, they've changed the mechanic. It was.
Do you remember when that was removed then?
Oh yeah, that was ages. That was like 2011 or something, was it?
I've got a good question then. You know they introduced the new fleet mechanics where you can warp in a line or a triangle or whatever?
Yep.
If you warp in a wide enough line, do the ships on the edge not get affected by the bubble?
It's a good question. And do you know, instead of me answering that, shall we test it?
I think we should. I think it's good amount of number to test it.
Guys, I'm sorry, I have to bail. Thanks, PJ, for a fleet.
Yep, no worries, dude.
Have a good night. See you tomorrow.
Yep, see you later, man.
Bye.
Yeah, so we'll end on this. What I'll do is I'll bring PJ in because he's got fleet warp mechanics. I ain't trained it on Bosri.
Have you got it fully all the way, or?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I've not done like the penis or anything yet. I keep threatening that I'm going to do that. So yeah, who wants to be a dictator pilot? Who wants to sit on the center bubble? I just need one person to sit and. Oh, actually, I can do it with Bosri, right? So this will be the last one, and rather than me give you the answer, we'll actually show you it, right? Because it's quite cool.
Who's going to do the fleet warp though, and from where?
I'll do it. Don't worry. So I've got PJ coming. So yeah, if you don't know what we're on about here, there's a new mechanic where you can change the way that a fleet lands when coming out of warp in formations, right? You've seen it, I know you have, right? Where you'll land as an arrow, a wall, or I'll do a wall first. I'll do a 40-kilometer wall, 4 kilometers apart. Right, so what this is going to do is it's going to try and warp us at a wall, and we're all going to make a big vertical square shape. Right, now we're going to see how the bubble affects us from that. Oh shit, did I do a fleet warp? I did, right?
Yep.
Good. See what happened? Exactly what Retro was saying.
We went through the bubble.
Most people, because I've gone for the really wide one, most people miss pass it because it's all about that intersecting path. If your end point, at the point of us doing a warp, it already decides on where everyone's going to land at the end, and if you're not intersecting that bubble during that time, then it's not going to drag you. The mechanic stays the same. Does that make sense? a really good question,
Yeah.
though.
Can we try again? I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
Do you want to
Yeah,
try
yeah.
a smaller one, or?
Do a few other types of things. Not the wall now, but like
Yep.
the arrow or
And
whatever.
stuff. Yeah, cool. Is there anything whilst we're doing this, guys? We'll wrap it up and we'll just mess around with this. Is there anybody else who's got any more questions? So I'm just going to mess around with the fleet warps and we'll see how the different ones affect. I had fun with this on CC when the first things came out. It was quite fun. What do you want next? The arrow? Do you want a smaller one or do you want a bigger one? I'll do a 20-kilometer one instead, with the 4K spacing. But yeah, if nobody else has got any more questions, guys, we'll finish the sort of me lecturing about rubbish. That one was really weird. We went through it, right?
Yeah, I was definitely going
That's
through it.
odd.
Yeah,
Oh.
went through it.
Yeah, there was one mechanic actually that I wanted to. I don't know how this works, why it works, or anything, but I do want to show you. So we'll just go back to this classroom viewing room, and I'll go from there. And I was trying this before, right? And it's exactly where Bosri is. So Bosri was anchoring a bubble here, right? Dropping a bubble. Then I was warping over to my right, well, my screen right, to this one over here. One sec. And for some reason, I could warp straight through the bubble. I've got no idea why. But when I did it with any other ship,
Maybe you're nullified.
yeah, I've not got. You've got my fit in the window. I'm not nullified. Not pressing the nullification, and it only works this way, right? Let me see if it still works. So my path is intersecting this bubble, but it is letting me go through it. When I try to warp back, you guys try to warp to me individually. Oh, but when Bosri tries to warp backwards through the bubble, it stops me, and I can't explain it.
I know. It's because you're slightly less than or slightly more than the 500 kilometers, probably.
No, I'm 250 kilometers.
Oh.
Every other ship, other than the person who was dropping the bubble, gets stopped. Bosri was able to warp through. I wasn't going to mention it because I can't explain it, and I don't know if it's a bug, a mechanic, or what. So I wasn't going to mention it, but since we ended up warping through that bubble then, I think there's some strange stuff that's happening, and I can't explain it. Yeah, so I've waffled for a while, guys. Thank you for your time. Hopefully you've picked up some useful tips to maybe get you to the point where you think, actually, I might try and fly a saber.
Thank you.
If you find any more questions during the time, just poke me right on Discord. And like I said, hopefully, you know, some people have learned something. I know a few people at least learned about the bookmarks and how to sort of stay alive on the super grid and stuff. But yeah, it's good stuff. Thank you for coming. Again, poke me with any more questions.
Thank you, man. It was
Yeah,
very,
thank
very
you.
interesting.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thanks a lot.
Benji.
That was very
Thank
informative.
you.